Hey, this is Jim McDonald. Welcome to episode 221 of the PowerCast. Our guest for this episode is retired Navy SEAL Jeff Nichols. He's been through a lot of adventures, and he's actually on an adventure right now. He is touring the country, checking out different training facilities, meeting with different people, trying to decide what kind of facility that he would like to open when he returns. He has a fantastic TEDx talk that I will link in actually on the website on thepowercast.com under this particular episode. You should check that out as well. Anyway, we had a great time talking to Jeff. We'll be back on Friday with a special Q&A episode that's sort of, I guess you could call it our 4th anniversary. So like and share, and we'll talk to you on Friday.
Support for this episode of the PowerCast comes from our newest sponsor, Precision Nutrition, home of the world's top nutrition coaches. Check out the free course for our listeners at get.pn/PowerCast. That's get.pn/PowerCast. Reebok, home of the legacy lifter at Reebok.com. 8-Man Apparel for people who lift heavy weights at 8manstrong.com. Compex Muscle Stim products at CompexUSA.com. Use the code PowerCast and get an additional 28% discount. HowMuchYouBench.net, home of Mark Bell's Slingshot. Use the code PowerCast and get 15% off slingshots and free shipping on orders of $100 or more. And Bodybuilding.com, the world's largest fitness website and supplement store. Bodybuilding.com has free plans for every level. Visit Bodybuilding.com today to become your best self.
Recorded live in West Sacramento, California, this is Mark Bell's PowerCast. Standing just to the left of Jim McD, here's your host, Mark Bell.
A couple presidents, direct protection for them. Prime Minister of England. A couple princes and kings, generals. No, I did Obama and Bush. And just various other people.
What's the most nerve-wracking thing you've ever done? Military or otherwise?
That's fairly easy. So, about once every other year, the command I was at would rent, for lack of a better term, a Disney cruise liner. About 35, 40 miles off the coast of Virginia, a hurricane came in, and our boats will come up alongside of it and hook it with titanium ladders, 4-inch titanium ladders, and it's about a 60-foot climb, and we did it in a hurricane.
Ooh.
That fucking sucked. I've only been scared twice, legitimately afraid, and all those. I mean, it's not a bravado, but like on target, you're not super afraid. You're just hyper focused, and because I've had
What's on target mean?
Like overseas, like in Afghanistan, actioning.
You're on a mission.
Exactly, but climbing a ship in the middle of the night in a hurricane is fucking scary, like super scary.
You're in the middle of climbing a ship, and the wind is, 120 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's not so much like the wind, because we'll depending on where the winds are coming from, they'll turn the ship,
Right.
and we'll pick the side where the ship blocks. But the ship is doing this, and then you have 15 to 16-foot waves.
You can't just arrange this for some other day.
Yes, but like the mentality of people are like, hey, this is the worst possible scenario. If you can do it here, then when it's nice, quiet seas, shouldn't be a problem.
It's Wednesday and there's a hurricane. And nobody's thinking, hey, you know what? There's probably not going to be a hurricane here on Friday.
Right. So but no, it's like we got the boat till Thursday.
Yeah.
We paid $6 million every 6 hours for this thing.
Oh, my God.
Or whatever it is, something silly. Like, well, the boat's
Anybody get hurt?
Yes, someone got. Actually, the guy, the most recent sail who was killed, got hurt. But we were on the back side of the ship. The boat was against the fantail. That's the end.
Yeah.
The rear, and the propellers. The boat got a little bit close, and a swell came, and the tip of the boat went under. The propellers pulled it in, pulled the boat under. It flipped, and one of the propellers hit the guy. I'm talking propellers bigger than me.
Right.
Hit him in the skull. We pulled him out. He was like toupee pulled back and skull.
Ouch.
He was coherent. but it went through his helmet.
Oh,
God.
So that I guess a lot of us got hurt. I know guys have fallen from it and then landed in the boat on their back or something. And I tore. I'm not sure what severity, but I tore my bicep on that climb.
yeah.
But and then also one of my flexors in my forearm that sucked. But
Things like a torn bicep, or you fucking bang up your ankle, you sprain your ankle, and you're in combat. Like, is that something that's like you just put on the back burner and you keep cruising along because it's like I'm at war, or is it still fucking like, hurt all the same?
Yeah, if you're on a mission, if you don't want to become the mission, like, oh, you're hurt, shot. Well, if you get if you were my on target with me, you got shot, you become the mission. Right. You've got to preserve you, win the fight, whatever it is. But like if you're
somebody has to make sure I'm okay if I can't continue onward.
Like if there's no like threat of life, what ends up happening, like we skydive in or whatever we're gonna do, or come off, you break your ankle coming out of the helo or something. You're gonna basically you're gonna hang tight here. If you can't move, we'll bring somebody in to come scoop you up.
So you almost, in a sense, you don't want to use up resources if you don't have to.
Right.
Like if you can continue to fight,
you go.
Then you fucking shake off the torn bicep or whatever it is that may happen, and you just keep going.
For me, like a lot of guys, a lot of shoulder injuries, a lot of lower back injuries. That was kind of my thing, and neck. And that is why I became pretty opiate dependent for a while. Yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for me. Because even that, like we talked about, like using those modalities, if you will, are good to some point, but then you start offsetting some pain and quantity.
Right.
And it gets a little bit.
Yeah, and then you're not just offsetting pain, but maybe reality.
Right.
As well. You're like, I don't really feel like dealing with this straight. So I'm gonna deal with it.
That's I think that's really what we're talking about. Like that mitigate.
I mean, and that extends to I got a cup of coffee in front of me too. That extends to anything that's going to give you switch you one way or the other externally. You know, whether it's a pill or and if you look at the nation in general, my brother made that film Prescription Thugs.
Yep, fantastic film.
Everyone's got their own kind of thing. No, I shouldn't say everyone. That's not fair because there are people that don't. But a large percentage of the population, probably more, are consuming coffee and more are addicted to something: marijuana, steroids, caffeine. It doesn't matter what it is, right? Like it could be anything. Any number of things.
It could be like. Honestly, it could be just like an addictive personality is going to find themselves in a training environment all the time. Right. Whatever it may be, like runners, like rock climb, right? The dude that just ascended El Capitan,
that was insane.
That's bananas.
Free climbed.
Yeah, like that sort of stuff. People often ask me questions like, "Oh, you must do all this crazy stuff." Like, no, I like rocking chairs on my front porch. I'm a big fan of that. So I got that out of my system.
Right.
And in its own right, like. I suppose if I always grew up rock climbing, free ascending, that's probably within the realm of possibility. But my upbringing in the community I come from, or the weight training, it's not scary for me to have a lot of weight on my back. It's not scary for me to be on a mission necessarily because the people around me I trust. Mm-hmm. So you're a byproduct of your environment for sure.
When it comes to the opiates and stuff like that, is that end up being pretty commonplace? Like, I'd imagine medical care is probably fucking fantastic.
It is.
When you're in the military, because it has to be. People need all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And has that become an issue with some of the soldiers and stuff?
I've there's been an article recently, I forget where I saw it. Someone was chiming in on Fox News or something, and I rarely listen to that stuff, but about how common opiate use is in the military. I think at some point it may have been. Like I had access to it, but it doesn't start off as like a point of abuse. It starts off as like, hey, I've post-shoulder surgery, post this, post that, or like again, overseas, it's like, hey, mission comes first. Mm-hmm. And is it a common thing? I think it's common for people to be injured and try it.
Right.
But to be honest with you, I don't know of anybody, to include myself, where the consumption was so high that it deteriorated their capabilities on target. Like, I know guys, like for me, again, when I came
Somebody
home.
would probably recognize that.
Right. When I came home from deployment, you know, like on deployment, stress is way up here, but you manage it because you're so busy. Now I come home and, you know, there's not a lot of stress necessarily.
Not a lot of structure either.
There's this really contradictory thing that happens, in my opinion, is like you come home and what's comfortable is the stress. You come home and you're like, right, that's why, you know, sex, drugs, arguing with your wife, conflict kind of gets created to create that buffer of, it's normal. Yeah. Right? I think of it as like an RPM
like,
needle.
Oh, good, we yelled at each other.
Right, yeah, right, yeah. So there's conflict, but, you know, that is where the problem, it wasn't overseas where I was a really high-functioning individual. I was at home too, but I needed that. It's super self-deprecating, like that turmoil. And the opiates chilled me out.
Yeah.
Like it was almost a mood thing. It wasn't a pain thing.
Well, when you're in the military, you know, I'd imagine, especially being on a mission, that you guys have a lot of activity. You guys have a lot of protocol, a lot of things that have to get done. And when you come back, there's things that need to happen, but they don't really have to happen. Like, you don't really, like, there's not really a consequence, I guess, associated with.
Not a lot of mission critical activities.
Yeah.
When you're
So it's like, take out the garbage. It's like, fuck it. I don't really want to take out the garbage.
Yeah.
I don't really fucking feel like doing the dishes
Yeah.
because who cares if an extra dish piles up? Like, this doesn't matter. And you probably kind of fall into that routine of just not really worrying about it. And also, let's face it, like, being in the military and being militant is not an easy thing to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when there's not like major repercussions to it, you probably kind of take it for granted.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Like you definitely, you get like this suppressor built into your life. You prioritize things a little bit differently. That's why I say people ask me all the time.
Like when you come back, do you make your bed?
Actually, I do now. It's funny. It's funny that I do because it's kind of like my start, but I
think it's important too. Like if that's your set point. Like for me, I've never cared about it. My kids don't do it either. But if that's like your reset or your set point every day, then I think it would be crucial to do that.
Right. And
to go against it would be going against kind of like your beliefs, and then your day is all fucked up already just because of that one little tiny thing.
Like there's all these lists that come out. It's like 4 things that successful people always do, and it's make your bed. And I hear you. I get it. But I think that it's intent. That's really what we're looking at, in my opinion. It's like, okay, what do you intend for your day or whatever? Because that's what's so magnificent about the community I come from, is that success it's almost predetermined. Now we can't, like on the other side of it, you have humanity. Like you have a lot of people that do some crazy shit. And you can't control that. You can't control how people act under stress. But what I can control, especially like in a weight room environment or training environment, is I can control how I prepare for it. That's the best thing I can do. And our community does that as good or better than anyone else. That preparation to almost guarantee success is awesome. Like that is what
off the points of failure. Like this is the execution that we need on these things. Your gun's got to be clean this way every fucking day. This procedure has to happen.
Yes.
Other men will die.
Yep.
People will get injured. Shit will get fucked up if it's not done this way. And so you learn to do it that way.
Right.
And then the preparation is just fucking on point.
Right. And that's the thing is like you have guys that are like, oh, Navy SEAL motivator. I'm like, no, what you're missing is like the real meat. Like motivation will not make up for lacking of preparation. Right, the mindset that you get in before you go into the bar.
Yeah,
you could do that.
Yeah,
but if you weren't prepared to do it,
I could also not do it and be fine.
Well, but the point is, that's your process, right? That's your process. But and they go, I want you to, because I've had so many teams.
I told you why I did it today. Like
for sure,
for me, it's a routine. Jim's seen me do all these different things before. Jim doesn't do any of that. Jim's lifted some huge weights in his time as well. 650 squat, over 600-pound deadlift, and Jim walks up to the bar as if he's getting ready to tie his shoes.
I got no amp. I'm just not that guy.
That's the way he is.
I'm not that guy.
Each person's a little different. For me, I've always liked kind of like clearing out the room a little bit and being like, hey, I'm going. I don't. If other people don't care or whatever, that's kind of up to them. But I like the attention. I like kind of saying, hey, like I'm about to go, and the more you guys get fired up, the more fired up I am, and I really feel that helps me. Whether it does or doesn't, probably debatable. But
Right.
I feel that the positive energy in the room is amplified. And I do know that whenever I've moved a big weight in here, especially more recently, the other guys are like, holy shit, like, I gotta keep going. Because Mark's getting older, but, like, he ain't fucking slowing down. And he just pressed 455 today. There's other guys in here, a couple of them done 500, but I'm coming right back after them again.
Yeah,
you know? So
for sure.
For me, it's like a way to kind of awaken myself, kind of get the team up a little bit, and just kind of say, hey, I'm going to take these 15 seconds to peacock, and then I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and some people do it after, too. Some people will celebrate.
Stand efforting.
And other people don't
Stand
celebrate at
efforting
all.
was a good example of, like, he kind of just made noises, like, during the lift.
Yeah.
He'd be kind of excited afterwards, but he wasn't, like, going crazy on the platform either. He might smack his hands together or something quick and be excited, and that would be the end of it.
Which is with my grandson, who's about 2.5, and he climbed up this thing. It's all ropes. It's the kind of thing that would drive you nuts as a parent or as a grandparent, how high he was going up this thing. And he climbed to the top of it, got as high as he could possibly go, and he's like, I did it. And like that moment of celebration, and to think at 2.5 years old that you would think about celebrating your own accomplishment, like it's so ingrained in us. You're either that guy or you're not.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
his thing.
It's his thing.
Another kid would go up there and maybe do something different.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's really interesting. As you were.
Yeah.
No, I think that I get a couple really very common questions, and when I'm
You were
working.
talking about like the motivation.
Yeah, it's not that I don't believe in that, the motivational side of it. That what works for me, and I think that what's most sustainable is helping people find a process towards that purpose. Mm-hmm. That's the big one for me, and that's the parallel that I draw between the corporate world, athletics, the iron game, whatever it is, and my community is. Without our process, our purpose is kind of, we're just going to spin our wheels. Mm-hmm. And that is how we almost guarantee success in a community the SEAL community, in the special forces, really even the military. But again, success isn't proprietary.
Yeah.
No matter what it is.
Yeah.
And if you take somebody that's been very, very successful, even if they're an outlier like a LeBron James, big part of his success, at least in his mind, is that he's hit all of these milestones on a daily basis or a monthly or yearly basis. That if you come to that roadblock, you're like, man, I'm having a bit of an off day. You have these breadcrumbs behind you that you go, okay, I've got a reset point. I've got a reset point. And you can see like little micro snaps of it, like whether someone's going to walk up to a bar on a deadlift and doesn't feel right, you step back and reset. The tactical world, like you're on the range shooting. I'm going to holster, take a deep breath, step back, right? Bryce Harper steps out of the batter's box, right? Doesn't feel right, reset. And we've got to allow ourselves to have those reset points.
How hard's that got to be when there's bullets flying by your head?
Well, that's the beauty of it, is because there is the command I came from in Virginia Beach. I was a new guy at that unit, and I had and still they are amazing mentors. And I was leading a breach, explosive breach on a large door. And history has been blow the door, run in, right? And I remember blowing it, and I took off running like 2 steps, and I heard that someone grabbed me, my body armor, and he pulled me in, and he goes, let those motherfuckers inside figure out what they want to do first. And like light bulb, and right then bullets just started zinging through that door, and I was like, whew. And ever since then, it's like, whatever it is from my life, I'm like, okay, go. Like those little micro moments of like assessment and relaxation or preparation, whatever they may be, are so very valuable. And you see people that perform well consistency, they do in their own right, not the exact same thing, but they're achieving the same thing. And that's so valuable for me. And I like to watch guys like you and you that have been under the bar for a long, long time and go, well, how is that person? Because what's going to end up happening, I'll come across somebody that is very similar to you in some regard.
Right.
And I'll go, well, hey, I saw Mark Bell do this once. What do you think about that level, that way of preparation? Because if you just, if you survey the population of the planet, we all end up running in this world. We all running some of the same issues. Now, how I tackle that issue may not work very well, but how he did may work very well. And if I'm not paying attention to it, I'm just an asshole. Like, because you're in this environment, like you
got to pay attention.
You got to.
How insecure would everybody be going into those situations if they didn't have all that training and didn't have like a template for dealing with every situation, and then be able to observe and know when they needed to vary from what they've been taught? Like, how scary would that be if you didn't know how you're supposed to proceed?
Yeah, that would suck. Because now we've been attached to certain units have been attached to us for very short periods of time, and you see this huge level of discrepancy in, I wouldn't say capability, but that stress inoculation, right? And it was no different. Like I'd mentioned, like I just got snatched up by the collar because like, hey man, slow the fuck down. You're gonna get yourself killed when those extra seconds, right? But I think it would be that instance that you described to me in the military world, or someone that's like when you first were talking about, you showed up, you're 13 years old and you're like, have a bunch of weight on there outside of your capability, you're going to end up regressing so much or getting yourself killed.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, for me, I really love, I don't usually say the word love, but I love mentoring people that really are passionate about certain things. Like for me, that's fulfilling. Being a teacher for me, whether it's your own children, right, or people that come in here and they've got something about them that you can see, you're like, I'm going to invest some time in that person because I know they're really going to appreciate that. That for me is very makes me happy, makes me really happy, because when I left the community, I was at that point of real mentorship as a leader, and when I got out, I was a strength coach before I came in the military in college, and I was driven by helping people out, right? We say like, oh, you don't want to make mistakes. Yeah, we do, but if I can have somebody make these little micro corrections in me so I don't have to really make those dangerous mistakes, and great. And so I think it would be really fucking scary if you're just like,
Yeah, if you do,
like bullfighting. Here's the cape thing. Go. You've seen me do it before, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary as shit.
There's that saying.
Let me pull up a YouTube video.
Yeah, right.
I think it's slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? Like,
right.
So, hey, take a fucking deep breath, slow the fuck down. Let's worry about execution. There's people that have applied that to all kinds of different things. And think about, you got this Conor McGregor fight coming up, McGregor and Mayweather, and the guy that beat Conor McGregor, one of the Diaz brothers, and the Diaz brothers are trained specifically to pitter-patter at you when they throw their punches. Now, it's not to say that their punches don't hurt. I've never been hit by one of them, and they have great technique, so I'm sure any shot from them would probably be pretty effective. But the point is that they intentionally throw punches at about 60 to 70%. And it's to try to stay on cadence and stay on point for a period of time. Like, these punches are coming at you, and they're going to be this percentage, and they're going to come at you in this way pretty much the whole fight. Every once in a while, just like baseball, there'll be a change-up, and you go, oh, that really fucking hurt. Where'd that one come from?
Yep.
Because they'll throw a straight right down the pike that just fucking drills you, right? And I think it's that consistency of flurries that they're utilizing, but they're utilizing that technique and that method of, let me just slow down a little bit. I'm going to be more accurate, and therefore I'm going to be more effective. And you saw the results. Like,
he was super disruptive.
yeah, Diaz he fucked McGregor up.
Yeah.
I mean, he made him look amateur in a lot of ways. It was like got to the point where it was embarrassing because McGregor, he even fell apart.
Yeah.
Like, he literally fell apart. He was too tired to continue, really.
Right.
Yep.
He, like a champion, he did not give up. Which must have been fucking hard. He must have wanted to take a nosedive there at some point. But it kind of goes to show you, if you slow down a little bit, you can be a little bit more accurate. And I imagine that's got to apply really heavily to shooting. When you're in battle and you have to take somebody out, or I'd imagine that there's got to be a lot of situations like that where you're like, if I shoot, I'm going to give up my position. And if I fucking miss, that's going to cost me.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's going to cost me a lot. Yeah. Maybe cost me some lives.
Right. I think in that world right there, I had a conversation with a really good NBA team with the athletes, and there was this hesitancy for them to have these conversations with me about, like, well, I know I'm a basketball player, but we're trying to learn, and I know the severity is different.
They want to be respectful and not
right.
be like, hey, when we're going to battle.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that, but at the same time, like,
it's similar enough. We can just say it.
The way that their mind interprets the severity of what they do, it is severe. It's important. Mm-hmm. I don't, like, if you were to snatch basketball out of Stephen Curry's life. Right. It sucks. And so now, but there is this neurological sort of observation or input, or want to say, like, if look at skydiving and the guy that climbed the El Cap, and all, if there's a point of failure there's a real risk of death. Mm-hmm. When that happens to the brain either shuts down, right? Control, Alt, Delete, reset, shut down, or we get into, like, the flow state or the zone, or whatever you want to call it. And so when it's no different than, like, the big bench, the big squat, the big deadlift, or like the really heavy, intense training, CrossFit or whatever. It's when you're in that state of optimization, you can then reproduce it, and then there's this familiarity. So when you encounter those really scary, awful moments, instead of flight, you fight. And that, you have to foster that. And I think that, like we were talking about, is like success breeds success. If every time you get under the bar, you're failing, that's what you're going to get used to. Every time you're shooting, you're missing, you're not learning anything. You're just blowing through rounds. And that's where my community, in the Special Forces community, is so great, is that we don't train to failure, we train to success. Because when you really, really need it, it's got to be there.
Yeah, and they use it in sports. I mean, it just ends up being the ultimate analogy, because they just use it in sports so often. You see it all the time. What are the Patriots going to start the game out with? Probably just a run up the middle.
Yeah.
Almost like you just said, let's see what those motherfuckers are doing.
Yeah.
How about a draw play?
Yeah.
I can run up the middle. Oh, okay, well, they're not attacking us.
See if they brought their hammer or their skirt. Which one? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, kind of see what's up, and in a fight, like you see it all the time. Oh, it looks like these two guys are just testing each other out. Meanwhile, these guys talked shit for months, right?
Yeah.
And now they're just throwing jabs and kind of seeing jabs of the stomach and trying to see, like, what the other guy's up to. And you see that time and time again, in professional football. You see it everywhere, because people are doing stuff. They're going to run slant patterns and screens and draws and things that are accurate and things that are easy, things they know they can accomplish. Because, hey, if we get on a roll, you're going to be fucked. If we get on a roll and we start feeling really good, you're no longer our opponent. We're just in here playing by ourselves, basically.
Yeah. It's like the psychological side of it. What people think a lot of times, especially from our community, even like the weightlifting community for sure, is that the sport community, it's like, oh my God, like, it's the home runs, it's the touchdowns, it's the heavy squats, it's the, like, fucking skydiving while I'm shooting, and it's silly. No. Like, if you legitimately perfect the basics, it's super unsexy, admittedly. It is. Right. But the value is far better, right? The home run, right, it gets put together because it's the manifestation of really great work and skill, right? A heavy squat is the manifestation of a lot of unsexy work under the bar and really good movement patterns. Shooting under stress.
Front squat with 315 for a set of 6, and then you blow up a 650 or 700 pound squat.
Yeah, it's serious.
But the work you did, the 3 sets, 4 sets, couldn't be any more boring.
Right. But that's what people like. They look at, like, baseball. People are bored to death of baseball. But I love baseball because of they make the complex look simple. People get bored to death of the back squat because it's but I'm the other way. It's like I love to squat because if I get out of my head, I'm going to get hurt. Like, I like that point of focus for me because, like, my mind, we'll call it OCD, whatever it is, it's like that point of focus for me is what keeps my mind occupied and happy. So I like to do that sort of stuff. I love it. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be doing it.
Right.
So, and then shooting is the same way. That takes a special sort of like, I'm a really good shot, but at the same time, I almost don't need to do a lot of focusing with it. So I like to shoot like a compound bow. That for me, I can't get out of my head. I really have to focus.
What do you think that is? You think that's just because you've done it a lot, that you end up being a pretty good shot?
Not that I don't like. If I were to go to a range right now with a pistol or my AR, I'm gonna take 50 or 60 rounds from my pistol and 50 or 60 rounds from my AR, and I'm gonna really just shoot slow, really basic. That for me is really enjoyable. It's like a point of zen for me.
I was going to say zen. That
sounds to me like
finding zen in it.
So we have a friend, Furious Pete, who's a competitive eater, and when he goes and you go and eat food with him, just sits there and eats it, just like anybody else. He eats it nice and slow, chews it, enjoys every morsel of it. So a little bit same from you. Like, I'm sure you shot all kinds of things and done things, all different variables and variations of things, and some sexier than others, and some more fired up than others, But when you go and you just want to kind of enjoy yourself, it's just a slow pace.
Yeah, it's like you can't always work at that intensity.
And it's not necessary to prepare for.
It's really not.
Whatever.
Like it's again no different than training. It's like you throttle up when you can, throttle back. You don't need to always be in the red.
Yeah,
You're always in the red. Some people some people work really well in the red.
Well, we preach that in general.
Yeah.
We preach that in general, not just the maximum weights, but maximum physique, maximum strength. Like, there's not really a reason for you to have your maximum strength all the time. Now, for some people genetically, they can just, for whatever reason, they could not deadlift for 6 weeks and come in and pull the same as they did before. Like, there's some people that are just outside of that realm, but for the most part, usually you have to work towards it. You got to peak towards it. If you want to look good in some photos or you're doing a bodybuilding show or something, normally you have to really train for it. There's a process that you go through to get there. But there's really no reason to, try to obtain some of these things that you really realistically can't hold on to.
Right.
You won't even really get to reach some of the goals that you want to when you're overreaching too much.
Right.
You can't use ammonia on every set. You just can't.
No, it'll dull the value.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's you can't you're not going to wear a belt just to wear a belt or a wrap to wear a wrap, whatever it is. But same thing. Like, I don't feel like I need to, like, every shot, draw, shoot.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't need that. I mean, I always look, when I spend a lot of time coaching and teaching a lot of tactical populations, firefighters, police, a lot of guys preparing to go into the military and wounded veterans. And I always think that, like, the first rep and descent on a bench press is no different than drawing a pistol. It's like that first one I want nice and slow and deliberate, and now I have a path to follow. I can speed up from there. It doesn't matter what it is, squat, shooting. I always like to think of it, because if you've been training long enough or you've been working the military population long enough, you get to a point where you're going to go, why the hell am I doing this? Like, what's the purpose? Like, I'm putting all this time and effort into something, and I don't really see the equated value. I'm putting in 7-8 hours of training a week, and 6 months goes by, and I'm like, I'm not any stronger, I'm not any faster, I'm not shooting any better. Well, there's something really fucking wrong then. Like, your training it's not good.
Right.
I don't like wasting my time, and I don't like wasting anyone else's time. And I think that's a huge, huge problem is, some people socially just want to train. And I don't have any issue with that, but for me, especially in the tactical population or in the competitive sport population, like, aren't we supposed to be getting better? Like, isn't that the idea?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a day off or an unloading. Yeah, I'm going to just move around and be social, whatever, but like, I don't do well with people that just want to socially exercise.
Today's sponsor, Precision Nutrition, is the industry's most respected gold standard for both nutrition education and nutrition coaching. Over 50,000 health and fitness professionals have taken their certifications, and they've personally coached more than 50,000 clients who've collectively lost more than 1 million pounds. They're consultants to companies like Apple, Equinox, UFC, and Titleist. They've created something special for PowerCast listeners today. When you visit get.pn/PowerCast, you'll get access to an amazing free course exploring the science, or lack thereof, of nutrition's hottest topics, from grains to detoxes, from low carb to GMOs. It's all there. If you want to understand and learn how to navigate the latest trends and fads in nutrition, you can get the free course at get.pn/PowerCast. That's get.pn/PowerCast.
That's John Berardi from way back in the day.
Yeah, I love that guy back in the day. You know, he was controversial
articles.
because he was bucking trends. He was saying opposite of what a lot of people said at that point.
I remember the main thing that I got from him was why just have one school of thought? Why not embrace different ones and see what fits you? Makes the most sense to me. I mean, the principle they had too of not consuming a lot of fats and carbohydrates together.
Yeah.
Because then you think about it, you're like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. That's all the things I love. That's pizza and ice cream and pancakes with syrup and butter on them and all that kind of stuff. That really adds up too quick and you can't control because it tastes too good.
Absolutely. So head on over to get.pn/PowerCast. Check out this free course and learn what's up with nutrition today so you can talk about it like a smart person.
Being in Special Forces, do they...
Back up and tell us how you got into Special Forces.
Sure. There you go.
Okay, so
We haven't really covered that yet.
yeah, pretty.
Maybe even tell us
straightforward.
what it means. Fuck Special Forces. What's it mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I was the why. I don't know. I kind of always there's that allure. Not so much anymore because of all the fucking movies and books and stupid shit. But so this would have been.
Dude, I know how it goes. I watched Rambo.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's
700
that's
times.
pretty realistic, though. I've seen somebody shoot somebody with a bow and arrow. It's pretty cool. Not explosive tips, but no. Anyway, so
We can work on that.
Yeah, we'll get there. But I was a college athlete, right? That's the most strength coaches get in the biz, right? I was a college athlete, played baseball on Troy University in Alabama, finished playing as an athlete, could have gone in the minor leagues, like in a minor league contract, had a couple opportunities to do that, and I had friends of mine that played minor league baseball, and I'm just like, that sounds awful. But even though I love the sport.
Tough existence, yeah.
Right, it's $850 a month at the time. That's not good living. No. So I've always had a passion for training because I was small. I was a small kid, right? And then, stereotypical, right? So I found the weight room, loved what I did, and I became assistant strength coach, the first ever assistant strength coach at Troy at the time. Just timing was great, right? And I always had wanted to do something. I wasn't ready to stop being a teammate, a team member, whatever it was. And for me, it was, well, what's the most difficult thing I could do? Something that really, in my mind, without ever experienced it, like certainly there's value, the Green Berets in the Army, the Rangers, all those, I have all respect for that. But for me, it was like, well, what's the toughest? Well, certainly I was always good. I grew up in Iowa. Wrestling is king. I spent a lot of time around the University of Iowa wrestling in Dan Gable, and it was like, that's the mentality. Like, outwork people well. And I was always really good at
Tell
working
us a little
harder.
bit about Dan Gable. You told me last night at dinner, like he not even scored upon.
Yeah, like I think one of his feats, like one of the best was, in the 72 Olympics, not a single point was scored on him in the Olympic trials or in Olympic competition. That's unheard of in freestyle wrestling. And his mentality, I remember I was in high school and I was every Sunday, basically, and it still exists today, from 8 to 10, unless they're traveling, the University of Iowa wrestling team, they train after meet because usually on a Saturday. And then they open the gym. Like, local teams can come in till about noon, and the coaches and most wrestlers, unless they're cutting weight, will be there to help the kids. High school, all the way to the little crumb snatchers. And years I'd go in there with the team when I grew up in my hometown. And I remember asking him, because I was never a very shy kid. I was like, Coach Gable, I don't know the really exact question. I was like, well, what's it take to be like the best? And he answered me, but to the population, he was like, he said, there's always somebody out there meaner and tougher than you. And he kind of had this like shit-eating grin on his face. He's like, or, you know, you can, for a while, you can be that guy. And he was that guy. And for me, it made sense to me. Like, I can make up for some skill and talent by just outworking people. And that stuck with me still to this day. But I saw him this last winter and the winter before, and that guy still, the amount of humility that man has is it's not self-deprecating humility. That guy just, that man is a legend in my mind. He is the guy.
He must have had the ability to anticipate his opponent's moves like nobody.
Right. And he's still like the joke was like, I'll retire when one of my wrestlers can beat me.
Yeah.
And he was into his 60s, like post-hip surgery and hip replacement and hip resurfacing, and he still was like schooling these youngsters.
Still getting
right?
after it.
Right, and that was and that's still like with Tom and Terry Brands, who are the coaches there now. They're the same way. Like they are like they are Dan Gable reincarnated. And then Cale Sanderson at Penn State and some other guys, John Smith at Oklahoma State. It's just that world to me. It speaks to me. The wrestling does, and that translated into my military service. It really makes sense to me to work really hard. Because I can control that. No one else is going to be like, you can't fucking do it. I'm like, all right, well, I'll take the Pepsi challenge.
Right.
And I did. And I got through training. But certainly it wasn't easy, but it made sense to me. The community, the work ethic in that community makes sense to me. And the work ethic in the strength game, like the iron game, makes sense to me. It really
You're
makes
going
sense
through
to me.
boot camp and things like that, and I think you referred to as Hell Week and stuff. Is that a competitive environment, or is that not really a thing that the military wants you to do? You know, like are you trying to beat the next guy, or are you just trying to like just go?
Yeah. Well, for me, there was a proctor, someone who's assigned. One of the buzz instructors assigned as a proctor, kind of they're in charge, and they're kind of the good cop. The rest of them are bad cop. His name is Bill Lyman, and he's recently got out, and I remember him just going, you know what, fuck it. He's like, if you see someone struggling, encourage them to quit because you don't want them around anyway. When things are really, really tough, you don't want them around anyway. And so a bunch of us bonded like that. We're just like, we see guys struggling, and it wasn't a matter of just being a dick, but it was like, you don't belong here. You're going to get somebody hurt. You should go away. And they did. And it just makes everyone stronger.
Like, for example, like when they're doing like a set of push-ups or something like that.
Like, you just suck, man. Just get out of here.
They're struggling. They're
like,
dying. They can't do one more.
And that became kind of, I'm certain that that's the way it is for class to class.
Yeah.
It's like there's blood in the water. You don't belong here. And
well, there's a saying kind of on that same lines. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically, if you show a man an inferior way, he will give up an inferior status. You know, so like you probably get it all the time being in the military. People probably kind of when they like kind of like you were mentioning with the basketball players, where they're like, I'm not like you, but. And you're like, well, no, dude, you're a fucking professional athlete. Like, you're at a high level.
Yep.
Like, what I did was a high level. I was a specialist in my field, but you're also recognized for that too, and that's why you get paid millions of dollars.
For sure. And that's the beauty of it is there's not. I mean, there's certainly some mystery behind it, but when I look at it, especially in retrospect, there's not a lot of mystery to it.
In those moments, how could you tell a moment of weakness versus someone who just didn't have the will to make it?
You can just see it on them. Body language is powerful. Body language is really, really powerful. Like you see an athlete that's timid and they're like in this shrug position, their head down, and there's somebody doesn't look like the rest of us.
What's wrong with this picture?
Right, exactly, and it's not bravado. It's a person can accomplish these great feats. They're not by themselves. I mean, and certainly there's guys in the iron game and in sport that like just train by themselves and boom, they're a world champion. But in the community I come from, there's no individual. There's guys that, hey, you're a sniper, you're a breacher, you're the point man, you're whatever. You have your allotted task to support the unit. But we all got there under the same mechanism of training. And it's not like people ask me, what does it take? What does it take? And I tell people, when you get to buds, surround yourself with the meat eaters, like the people that really care to be there. They're not there to try. They're there to do. Now, if that person doesn't get it, you're like, well, you're one of the ones that's going to go away, you know. But I'm not there evaluating that sort of character and personality. I'm there just as a coach evaluating, are you putting the work in to prepare? And that's the big red flag. If someone's like, hey, man, I want to be a superhero, right? I want to have the cape, but I don't want to put the work in to be the superhero, right? Or I want to be a world champion, and all they want to do is ask you, hey, what shoes should I wear? What wrap should I wear? What should like, hey, man, just get strong first. That's a huge red flag for me.
Maybe there's some people that are there for the wrong reasons. Maybe they have some family members in the military, and maybe they're kind of pushed in that direction, and then they get there, and it's maybe something quite different than what they thought, too, right? I'm sure that's for sure. Things like that have to happen quite a bit. And then there's also a lot of people that end up in the military that were misdirected or misguided on where they should end up, period, because they didn't think they could go to college. They didn't want to be a police officer. They didn't want to be a firefighter, and they're like, I'll go in the military.
Right.
I know that special forces is quite different than that, but that is kind of what happens a lot of times with people joining the military, correct?
Right. And I think there's two sides of it. One is guys they're way in over their head and they didn't prepare.
Right.
And then there's other people that they are in such a hurry to get in. That's what you see. You know, the failure rate's 85% in buds. And the majority of those individuals are young, 18, 19 years old.
Right.
And now a lot of them are athletes, but they haven't really been tested. And that's no discredit to them as individuals. I went through after college, and
So you're 22,
I had matured
23?
some. I was 22, turned 23 while I was there, and that for me, I felt like I had a huge advantage.
So you already had some opportunities in front of you, too. I think
Right.
that's a big difference. Like maybe some of these younger guys didn't really have opportunity yet, kind of desperate just to get into
They're
whatever.
hanging everything on it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
But then the flip side, there was the youngest guy in my buds class was 17. His dad was a senior chief, a SEAL, and pulled some strings, got the detailer to get him some orders, and he crushed it. So, I mean, I think that
That's insane.
you just never know. You just never know.
Right.
But for me, I wasn't there to try it. Just like, I think today I'm gonna try and get strong. No, I'm gonna put the work in and get strong.
Right.
it's the red button on the
When
back
it comes
smokes.
to was there a particular day where you're like, I'm fucking signing up for the Navy? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, that for me that's the hardest part. That
Come over
big
here,
leap
Smokey,
is
I'll show
hard.
you.
I think it.
Because you're signing up for X amount of years,
5 years, and
and then was it your dad that was?
my dad was drafted in Vietnam.
Okay.
And it's not that he discouraged me, but his experience in the Army, albeit a good experience considering, he was just like, don't join the military. Like, it's not what I want for you. It's not. But when I got in, certainly he was super supportive, and then he began to recognize the differences, right? I'm not, and it's no disrespect to, the infantry or anything like that in our military. None at all.
You chose
very
to do it.
specialized.
Your dad was drafted.
Yeah,
So
and I think that there is that difference, but I have no regrets in that regard, really. There's some things I could have done better. There's some things I could have done more. Mm-hmm. But for my father and mother, they certainly supported it. They certainly did. And now with my son, who's 10, who's my reason for living and reason for getting out, and he's like, Dad, I don't want to do that. I want to be a pilot. I'm like, it's too dangerous. Because he started really realizing some of the things that I was involved in, and was gone a lot and so forth. But I'm like, I want you to forge your own path. Because there was a guy in my buds class whose dad was the commanding officer of WARCOM. That's the highest ranking SEAL in San Diego at the time. And we call them legacy kids that have genealogy from the teams. And he came in and he quit. So he was a corpsman. He shifted to the Marine Corps to be what's called an FMF corpsman. Like Navy corpsmen support the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. They wear Marine Corps uniforms, but the Navy insignias. And they were deploying, and I saw him at a gas station a couple weeks after he quit. And I had met his father because he was a fantastic athlete. And I was like, hey, how you doing? And he's like, pretty good. I'm like, how's your dad? He's like, oh, my dad won't talk to me because I quit. Right? His dad was a SEAL, and he was an F-6 Phantom pilot before that in Vietnam. Saw him a couple weeks later again, like a month later, and I was like, asked the same thing. I'm like, how you doing? Not so good. My dad still won't talk to me, and as a matter of fact, my mom just divorced my father. And I was like, whoa, that's some serious. Now, I think that, like, from a father's standpoint, it's like George Foreman, who names all of his kids George and Georgetta. Like, there's some ego there that you can't really get away from, and that's just not me. It's important that my son does what he wants to do.
Has his own identity.
Yep, that's important. And I think that's like for anybody, too. So I've learned sport and weightlifting and training and the military, there is supposed to be some sort of, it's got to keep you a little bit humble. If it doesn't, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, there's plenty of people out there doing stuff that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
So why not, like, what you said about your parents. Like, of course, they're going to be fucking scared about their son. I mean, your job as a parent is to protect your child.
Yep.
You don't want them doing anything dangerous. And as a parent, everything's dangerous.
Right.
Like, I don't want you to be a fucking rock star. You're going to fucking die when you're young.
Yeah.
Like any of it, right? Like pro wrestling, fucking any of the shit that me and my brothers
Everything your family has done.
Yeah, all the stuff that we did as kids, and you're always going to be, but you don't really have a choice once the child makes the decision to go towards something. Why not just embrace it?
Full throttle, go. I mean, I'm a believer in that. And that's how my family is. Just like, hey, if you're going to do it, don't fucking quit.
So what was kind of that day like when you were like what did that look like when you signed up for the military period?
Yeah, for me, and it's also part of the advice I give people. Like, I knew what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I went to the recruiter, and I had listed a number of questions, or demands, if you will. And I go, this is what I want to do. If I don't get these, then I'm not doing it. And being a college grad, I was in grad school at the time, and he's just like, wow, normally I get like the 18-year-old or 17-year-old that doesn't know, like just kind of throws himself in there haphazardly. And I had a great experience with my recruiter. He was like, oh, this makes my job way easier. Not to mention I take the ASVAB, which is the test you have to take to become in the military, and I got a perfect on it. And then they thought I cheated, so they made me redo it again. I took a perfect. I got a perfect. So I could choose the job I wanted anyway, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. That's what I'm going to do.
What's that test look like? Is that
it's a simple. It's written
thing
at the 5th grade level.
Yeah, it's
simple
really
math,
not hard.
Simple
That's
reading,
the thing.
Like, this cog turns this way, this one turns this way. Which way does this one?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of that perception stuff, and like what it'll show you an unfolded thing, and you're supposed to figure out which thing.
Turns
it would.
into.
I would get a very
fold
unperfect grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that hard.
No, it's literally at a 5th grade level.
I think I got like the 97th percentile.
I'd have to tap out.
Yeah, it's out of a
midway through.
99.
Yeah.
So, but they're like, oh my god, like I'm almost done with grad school.
They should be able to get this.
3.96 GPA in
shit.
grad school. Like, this shouldn't be very difficult.
Yeah.
Did you do well in school, like in high school and stuff like that?
Not as well as I should have.
Yeah.
I didn't apply to myself at all.
Yeah.
And then I got to college, and I had a really, really cool professor.
So that's something that people don't recognize, I think, also when they're raising their children. A 10-year-old boy, 11, 12, my son's 13. I think a lot of times a parent will go and watch their kid play baseball and I think we have these fucking warped images of the way that we were. And you think that you were so, you think you were such a beast or a savage at whatever it was you were doing. And no, you're a little kid. You're fucking timid about a lot of things. And who knows why you don't want to push yourself in school. Maybe it's just not cool with your friends. And
That's
so,
a big one. You see it a lot in college.
Or maybe
you're
you're
like,
just not interested in the subject.
Yeah,
sometimes
give a
that's
flying
I hated
fuck
history.
about
Now I love
science
it.
or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, I was good at math because it
Yeah.
made sense to me. There's an answer, but you're.
And so, of course, you're going to be on top of your kid to you got to do your homework. And my biggest frustration with my son for a while was he would get zeros because he wouldn't turn stuff in. I'm like, this is just.
I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah. So this one is the one thing that is completely 100% unacceptable. My foot will end up in your ass every single day if this continues to happen because it's absurd. Just don't get a zero. That was my thing. I was like, I don't care what grade you get.
Yeah.
Finish the fucking stuff.
Yeah, and I can give you some insight on that one too, because that one pretty often happens when a kid is very talented and they're very hard on themselves, very perfectionistic. Right. So they did it. They did the assignment probably, and
he did it often,
and didn't turn it in.
Right.
because they always thought it could have been better than it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's rough.
And he fixed that up. His grades fucking I mean, part of school is like just being willing to dive in hard enough to like trick everybody that you give a fuck.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's
Like
it.
Yeah,
that's like
exactly.
a sign, and it's like that's
Exactly.
actually a little bit of a sign of intelligence. I believe is like, hey, just pretend like
just
life is about that.
Yeah,
Like,
just
pretend you
lockstep
fucking-
through stuff.
and
Yeah.
you care for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You know
That
what
was
I
the
mean?
challenge. Like, I had a professor that basically challenged me, and he's like, if you do this, I'll give you some extra credit hours for advanced chemistry. And I was like, free hours, right? I can't beat that. So it was just like rules. Show up to class every day. What a fucking concept. College, right? Get to know your teacher, because not like in like a pal sort of way, but every morning, hey, Professor so-and-so, how you doing? It's good to see you. Sit in the front row. Engage in conversation, answer questions, pay attention, take notes. And then like when it comes test time or whatever, or grading time, the teacher's like, oh, that Nichols, like he's always there.
You just don't want to be that kid you don't want your kid to be that kid either, where you're coming down the hallway and the teacher's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Oh,
pain in my
fuck.
ass.
Here comes Bell.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Here comes Nichols.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Or girl, whatever.
For me personally, it took until business school, when I getting my master's, that I was actually a good student. I was an okay student undergrad after I had taken a year off and came back to it, changed majors, all that kind of stuff. I was better then, and then my last year of school, like we had a kid until I had to be super organized. I didn't have any choice, or I was not going to get things done at all. And so that helped a lot, gave me a lot of focus. But the first year, two, whatever, when I was like community college, then I went off went away for the first time and stuff. Yeah, it was very difficult to stay organized.
Parents that listen to this podcast, just take a fucking deep breath and just realize that these kids will progress. They'll fucking move forward, and they're going to find their own way. And there's you do have to kind of instill some discipline. There's got to be some things that you do, because your kid's going to need some sort of routines and rituals and schedules and things of that nature. Whatever each person does in their own household is kind of up to them. But I see a lot of parents being super pushy on that, and I'm like, you're just going to get met with a lot more resistance. There's going to be a lot more resistance flinging back your way if you keep pushing and pushing.
The other thing I'll say
Today's
is,
world's more complicated than ever too. So
the other thing I'll say is that in grad school there was a whole lot less BS. There was a whole lot
It's
less of that.
straightforward. It is.
Yeah, a whole lot less of that. Just like fake it to make it business,
Yeah, it's like it comes in surges for kids. Like if my son shows an affinity for a while for like, I really want to read, take him to the bookstore, let him buy as many books as he wants. We'll go through them. When he slows down, I'll slow down with him. When he's ready to learn, feed him. When he doesn't feel like it, like just be there. Yeah,
just let it happen.
that's it. I mean, we're just big kids. I'm the same way. When I'm ready to consume information, I consume as much as I can. When I'm not ready, I don't force it.
Yeah, you'll find a topic that you dive deep into and just live it and breathe it for a while.
Right, and the same with training. Like I think that gives me some legs, so to speak.
Yeah.
When I'm like really ready to train, I'll train. When I'm not, I'll put some work in, but I don't, like, my hair's not on fire. Like, oh my God, I didn't get good training this week. I'm gonna get smaller or weaker or slower. Like,
Lose all my gains.
human body's far too resilient for that.
I've been on this tear where I've been, training like 80-something days in a row now, and I just let it like happen, Like I will say like, oh, I want to get in here at whatever hour, and I could get here 4 or 5 hours later sometimes. I just wait until I'm
right.
ready to go. The problem is if I have other work to do, I'll carry that with me into here. So it's like I need to make sure that at least most of that is scraped off me before I come in here.
Yep.
Because then I'll be kind of holding on to that.
Got to find a good stopping point to pick up from.
And then as you mentioned earlier today is like just make sure what you're doing is like what you want to do. And, not to expand on that a little further is like make sure it's what you want to do, but make sure it's kind of like when you want to do it. Because I have the freedom to pull some of that off, so why not? To make my life less stressful. I'll feel better about doing it when I feel like doing it.
Right. I mean, because nothing, and I mean this, like this is one, like I rarely say always and never, like absolutes kind of just make you feel like you turn out to be an asshole if you speak in absolutes all the time. But for me, like
they're hard to
always
stay
for me-
consistent with too.
Yeah, like there's nothing in my mind worse than regret.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have to live with a bunch of regret. Like failure is one thing. Like try, fall short, try, fall short, rather than go. I mean, that's the primary reason for me joining the military was I didn't want to be 35 or 40 or whatever number, right? When I was 22, 23 to go, man, be 35, not having done those sort of things and go, man, I really wish I would have done that. That would have fucking sucked. Mm-hmm. Like that for me is I don't want to try and live with that shit. And that's just to say it is now. It's like I have people all the time who are like, yeah, wait until you're 40. You'll get way out of shape. Like, yeah, I got it, pal.
Right.
Thanks, bud. Like, don't squat deep. It's bad for your knees. Got it.
Those common things that people say, you know, those things they pick at you, you know, and I think, you know, there's many examples of it, but people just kind of say these things like, oh man, Mondays are so hard, or they say, you know, they'll poke fun at their significant other, you know, with saying like they don't get enough sex or like whatever the case is. But these things that people typically say, it's like shit doesn't need to be that way.
Right.
Like if you just communicate on what it is that you want to do, then you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Right.
You know, like if you're not okay with something, figure out a way to manage it and to have it be such a way that you don't have to be frustrated with it.
Right.
Mondays don't have to suck. Like I start my Monday out every week here training. I meet with 6 or 7 other employees and we go outside and we fucking pull the sled around and we do all this like uncomfortable shit. But when we get it done, it's like, what a great way to start our week. Now we have the rest of the work day ahead of us. We're going to work. We're going to fucking eat healthy, and we're going to attack the day, and we're going to try to get out in front of everything. It's Monday morning. A lot of other people maybe are still sleeping when we're finishing our training session. It's just a great way to get after it. And you can fight against a lot of these things, and you can make your own bed, make your own shit, make your stuff the way that you want it to be.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a poor me kind of. I don't do the victim. I mean, at certain times you find yourself kind of a low point.
Oh, everybody has to. Yeah,
you got to regress a little bit, but there's certain things your child getting sick, your wife getting hurt, something, whatever it is, God forbid, all that. But like you can't control that. Got it. But like I am in control of me. Right. Now I can be a little obsessive sometimes. It can be, but I've seen too much to not have a certain perspective. And I think that is also someone that's a constant crisis mode. Like that's not something that's not somebody I have time for.
Yeah.
So I don't surround. One of the best pieces of advice I've gotten is like, be a byproduct of the people that mentor you. Like that's like, so surround yourself with good fucking people.
Right.
Like shitty people yield shitty people.
Shitty results. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have time for that.
If you're a giving person, you spend a lot of time checking on other people, but the people who really care about you are the people who check on you.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, you know, and also too, I mean, most of the people I know that are in good, strong, healthy positions and feel good about their relationships and their business and their exercise and their health and their this and that. Usually, they're people that are usually pretty selfish. You know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you do have to take care of yourself, you know, when you're on an airplane and, you know, they say, hey, in case of emergency, take care of yourself, then take care of your child next to you. Like you put the fucking mask on first, your oxygen mask on first, and that's a good example of, hey, you got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of other people.
Right.
And I've always felt that way, you know, in training and in doing some of the things. It's like, yeah, all right, well. Does kind of suck for my family that I'm at the gym for like 4 hours, you know.
Right.
But a lot of this is helping with a lot of other things. And then I also have to be a little cautious of that doesn't happen all the time every single day. So I'm not being an asshole and I'm not getting to their needs as well. Because then you start to really get out of sync and get off balance. And then, you know, I hear a lot of people also, you know, talking quite a bit about balance. And I think the most successful people and people that are put up on a pedestal and, you know, people that end up in the Hall of Fame, people that are legends and this and that, and they're, Albert Einstein and some of these great people of the past, those people just don't have balance. Like they just, you absolutely, if you're Elon Musk, balance doesn't exist. That's why he's been married.
Chaos is his balance.
Yeah, he's been married several times, right? I mean, there's going to be some holes in everybody's game, and the stronger that somebody is, the weaker they're going to be somewhere else. It's impossible to be strong throughout everything unless you're just a little bit more even keel, and unless you built things up a little slower.
Not everybody can check all the boxes, and they can't check them all the time either.
Fucking spinning plates.
Yeah, like
fucking going on one plate.
Steve Jobs, same thing. Like he ignored that. The kid that he had for a long time never really put anything into her life at all until much later, till
Yeah, and what a weird existence, right? Like you're trying to affect the world, but immediate
You can't even
impact.
control people. You can't even almost control yourself. You're chaos in yourself.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
immediate impact on somebody close to you. You're hurting them all the time because you can't function that well.
Right.
Within
It's
the
a
confines
conundrum.
of that.
Yeah.
It's fucking hard.
Like I'm guilty as anybody else. Like my relationships have suffered because of I can be a bit selfish, and I don't mean to be like it's ignorant, but I get really hyper focused on trying to do myself as good as I can, professionally, whatever it is. But not my son. My son has always come first for me, and doesn't bode well in a lot of relationships either. But there's a certain amount of chaos that my life has internally, and I think maybe I try to make up for it. I think I do a pretty good job of trying to help folks, and it's contrary almost to sometimes how my relationships are. Mm-hmm. But that's a struggle for me. But I still. I try not to use outliers as examples too much because I know, like, was it Albert Einstein slept like only 50? He tried to sleep 15 minutes out of every hour, and he never slept. Like, it's Albert Einstein. Like, he by all people thought he was. By all intents and purposes, he probably was a little bit crazy.
And who knows? Maybe he was a fucking alien.
Yeah, who knows, right?
I mean, we don't know.
Yeah,
He might not have been one of us.
Yeah. I don't know.
For sure. Well, and just on the point with kids too, like, yeah, you should spend as much time with them as you can, but when you're not with them, you're setting an example about your work ethic, about your values, all that stuff. And I mean, I think that's important for them to know too.
My dad has always told me, like, don't ever feel guilty about liking work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I take that to heart because I think that that's an important thing. It's like you can't split yourself in two, and you can't be in two places at once. I do like what Jason Khalipa has said to us before on the podcast is he has an AMRAP mentality about everything where he's thinking like as many reps as possible, but he's thinking, you said hyper-focus. I'm going to hyper-focus on my son. I'm going to hyper-focus on my wife. I'm going to hyper-focus on being with them. I try. I can still do a way better job, but like little things like just leaving my phone at home. Like if I go somewhere with my kids, do something with the wife, it's like we don't necessarily need two phones with us. It is convenient to have at least one in case someone needs to communicate with us for something.
But you're not running the National Security Council, so you don't really have to be available 100% all the time.
Yeah. If something happens and somebody probably knows where I am anyway, and they can probably come.
Yeah. I've gotten, actually, that's one thing have gotten good at is when I have my son and work has been done for the day, unless I'm expecting, because I don't need to communicate with his mom all the time at all about, like, I've got him. Like, my parents, my mom and sister or whatever, or whatever. My phone, I'll put it away. It's on silent. It's not on vibrate. Like, because that's with kids. Like, you can be working a lot, but if you say, hey, Thursday at this time, you got my attention, like, that's what they're looking for. Now, if you screw that up, you're going to create some division. But and also one thing, because I talking to a counselor quite a bit for my son when I was gone, but before he started getting anxiety, separation anxiety from me, the counselor was like, don't promise your son or daughter something unless you can fulfill it. To include, I promise I'm going to come home from this deployment. right?
Yeah.
But if you make those promises like, hey, Thursday, I promise you we're going to go have ice cream, they remember that shit. And adults do too, right? So I think that's what I pick my promises, but I don't overpromise, because then you're going to be made out to be an asshole.
So I cheated and actually did a little bit of prep for this one. I usually try to be as unprepared as possible. But I watched your TEDx talk, and so tell us about what you're doing now.
Yeah, it's kind of recently it shifted because I've sold my percentage of my business in Virginia Beach.
Sold your strip club?
Both of them.
Oh,
They're male strip clubs though.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna go. You gave me a free pass,
Yeah,
and you sold it.
Yeah, and a big old bottle of glitter. Because we don't use money. We didn't use money there. We just
It's
throw
just glitter, yeah.
Yeah. Just create an irritant.
What's it called? The Bear Den or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Glitter is the herpes of art supplies.
Strange, yeah. But so right now, again, I'm in this kind of.
You had the gym.
I did. I had training at a gym. Mm-hmm. And now, where I'm at, I have this kind of break that I wouldn't normally have had at 38 years old. I'm getting financially stable. I'm comfortable, whatever it is. But now, ironically enough, I'm here and I have a bunch of stops over at least the next 6-8 months where there's a lot of people I want to glean information and knowledge from. So I'm going to spend my next
tour,
year.
basically.
Yeah, I'm on a world tour. Like, I haven't broadcasted my tour dates yet, but I'm on a mission of information right now. Like, I've been coaching and teaching now for almost 18 years. I have a fairly robust clientele. I write a lot of programming specifically for the military in the NSCA and some other organizations, but I just really want to learn from people like you and guys like Cal Dietz and Matt Vincent and all these guys that I might not have ever had a chance to do. So the very long answer to short question is I just want to learn as much as I possibly can to make me a better coach and teacher. So when I open up another facility, I'll have a good idea exactly what sort of clientele I'm going to target. And it's probably going to be targeting military and very specific. Like if I call it a name, I'm going to call it performance first. Like let's really want to focus on performance. Not that I just like discount fitness or.
Right.
I just really want people that really want to train and prepare for something. Like that's where my passion's at. And because I'm an exercise physiologist, strength coach. I love being under the bar, but I also want to kind of get these little nuances that I wouldn't otherwise get unless I spent time with you or whoever.
Yeah. I think that's really smart because you, as I was mentioning to you, you'll appear on this podcast. You did some stuff with Chad Wesley Smith and some other people, and you're going to be relatively new to all these people,
right?
So people are going to be like, "Oh, where's this guy?" Even though you've been doing a lot of stuff for many, many years and have tons of experience with it, and experiences that most people don't have,
right?
But it's great to get your name out there kind of over and over again and be like, oh, yeah, I remember this guy was hanging out with Matt Vincent and Matt Wenning and Chad and this guy and that guy. And it starts to add up to something.
Right. Yep.
Because for some reason, that's like a thing. Like you have to be like established. You have to have kind of stamps of approval with some of the people that are cool in the fitness industry in order to be able to give information.
Yeah, I've been wearing a tactical tuxedo now for a while. And I've just kind of been in the shadow. I've been, like I said, I've been doing it for a long time or whatever, but I just kind of, to your point though, I haven't had a break to where I've been able to really capitalize on some of the social aspects of social media, via YouTube, those sort of things. I have a channel and whatnot, but that's what I'm trying to master as well. Like certainly I can keep learning on physiology and strength and programming and stuff like that, like the X's and O's. I'm going to do that, but like this is all new to me, kind of. Like I've done a handful of podcasts and such, but like I'm really trying to learn how to get information out there more effectively.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you killed that TEDx. It was awesome.
I
It was
appreciate
really good.
That and it isn't like anything else. It's if I was like a salesman for something I didn't believe in, that'd be tough for me. But if I'm telling a story or teaching something I'm very knowledgeable about, that's all it is storytelling at that point.
Right. And that's what people remember too.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the rules. So a good friend of mine, John Sullivan, who's a sports psychologist for the Patriots and a bunch of other organizations. He was like, rule number one when it comes to dealing with athletes is make them feel something. And like it or hate it, like you make them mad, make them happy, make them sad, make them something, make them feel something. And then if you can do that and relate it to something that they're passionate about, or just relate to them in general, like they're not going to forget it. And so that's the community I come from, is like teach, and then, hey, if you don't learn this, you're going to die. Right.
Stakes are high.
Like I spend a lot of time, my time teaching about sleep, because in high sport and in the corporate world is people sleep terrible. So that was a big thing for me, where I was just falling apart because I couldn't sleep. I was insomniac and all these sort of things. Once I got my sleep protocol in order, I'm able to capture conversation, because like one of the quickest ways you can lose an athlete is go, hey man, your program sucks, you shouldn't do that. Like, whoa. Like I'm doing pretty good at this point. Why should I change my program? Or you talk about dietetics. It's like, well, your eating habits are shit. You should, like, whoa. But if you start engaging with people on like, hey, this is how you enhance what you're already doing, then it becomes their own.
Yeah, here's 2 or 3 easy steps to make what you're already doing better.
And that's our community, because you have so many guys that were forged in this crucible, forgive the cliches, of high intense training that yielded this seal. Like, who are you to tell me I shouldn't train? Like, this is what got me here. Like, that's from the TED Talk. I always say, what gets you there typically won't keep you there. You've got to let some adaptation happen in your own programming or lifestyle to continue on with that positive adaptation, if you will.
And theoretically, you've learned things along the way that let you figure out what that next iteration is supposed to look like.
For sure. Yeah, I think just lacking process and really lacking purpose sucks. Because I've kind of been there. You get that. I got out of the military and I had this lifestyle that just consumed me appropriately. I got out and I was like, now what? Like, I knew I was passionate about training. I wasn't sure that that's how I was going to go down that road again, because I was still doing it in the military. Actually, I ran the human performance program on the active duty side for Naval Social Warfare, the SEAL community. That's what I wrote. I did a lot of that work. But I got out and I was like, you know what? I'm never going to own my own gym. Like, I know those things. That's a tough thing. I don't know business, but I knew training. So, a year later, I had my own training facility, and I loved it. But now I'm just kind of feel like I'm not professionally growing the way I need to. So now I'm just gonna world tour.
Piggyback off me.
Yeah, I'm just, just as much as I can ride your coattails.
Well, when you get in the grind like that, I mean, there are things that you're learning, but it's difficult to learn things new. You learn more about the processes that you're in, but you don't get that next level view.
For sure. Yep. So stay tuned. 6 months, it may change. I might have an ice cream shop in 6 months or something, or a strip club. My third.
There you go.
An ice cream strip club would rule.
Right?
Yeah,
good idea.
That'd be awesome.
Stay tuned.
You were kind of mentioning about like sleep and trying. So how do you get these people's attention? I know you've worked with some NBA teams. You did a TED Talk. What are ways that because it's like, oh, okay, well, he's a Navy SEAL, and like, just a lot of people just don't even barely know what some of that means. Right. They hear special forces and they know there's some higher level of commitment and sacrifice and things like that go along with all that. But it still doesn't really, it's not like you're going up there and you're the Rock.
Right.
You still have to deliver a good message. So what's a way that you try to grab a hold of people when you're doing some of these talks, or just to get them to keep their ears open for the entire time?
Right. I think that there is this, correct me if I'm wrong, there is this perception for people in my position, we'll call it, that I'm gonna share with you this tactical way of it. It's, in my opinion, it's a bunch of horse shit. It's absolute horse shit. And not to take away their passion or disrespect them as people, but it's like, we kind of mentioned it, like, it's really hard work and very unsexy to yield this level of precision. like let's not mistake that I'm not like running around everywhere and like combat rolling in my training and flipping tires with the body armor on and like that just yields fatigue. So
yeah, like you and I, when we were training today, you weren't like, hey, dude, you should feel some of this crazy shit that I did when I was in the military. Like, flesh was falling off from underneath my fucking armpits and my feet from doing all this stuff because I had chafing from the fucking beach. And, like, we should do some crazy shit in the sand.
Yeah, no. And
I would be just looking at you like, no, I'm not doing any of that. But even if I tried it, what would my experience be with it? It would just be negative.
It.
Yeah.
It would just be negative.
Yeah,
It'd
and that's the
fucking
thing
suck.
is
I'd
like
be
you have guys.
I'd be like, that guy fucking sucks.
It's
the worst.
It's in my opinion, it's super unethical and disrespectful. In my opinion. Now, what I will say though is that that's what people think, like Navy SEAL motivation. No, like no, it's not sustainable. What we're trying to do, just like in the TED Talk, is like we got to get people thinking objectively about how they're going to get to what they want to do. Right? Let's not focus on the 1,000-pound squat or the 50 home run season.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck are you going to get there? If you haven't given that any thought, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, how am I really going to get there? And a lot of people start going, holy shit, I don't have a plan at all. And that's what I do. I go in and say, what is your fucking plan? Like, what here's your goal. Well, I'm just going to do this and this. Like, okay, but how are you really going to get there? I'm going to wake up every day at 4 a.m. Why? You went to bed at midnight.
Right.
Like,
You're going to be tired.
yeah, you're going to be. It's going to last for 6 days, just like
Sustainable.
January 3rd every year. Fucking gyms across the country are full of people. February 3rd, tumbleweeds.
And it's usually like January 5th or 7th because everyone's still hungover and still fucked up
from the
from
New Year's.
not making the commitment
Like
on
that-
like the 1st or 2nd. You know what I mean?
Like, people approach goal setting as like, oh, I've got the goal, I just got to get there. It's super ignorant.
No, you have to look at the activities. You have to look at everything you're doing and say, does this forward my goal?
Right.
Is it helping me achieve my goal? And if it's not, does it still have value or does it not have any value at all?
Right.
And I mean, having the goal is nothing if you're not looking at the implementation.
No. And that's the thing too, is a lot of people, then it becomes this like mass implementation of new variables. Well, I'm going to really change my lifestyle. So I've got a new meal plan, and I got new gym bag and lifting shoes. I got a new personal trainer and
New slingshot.
New slingshot, exactly, right? And they're like, holy Christ, I don't know how to use any of this. So they fumble their way through it. They just spent a shit ton of money. Now looking on a bigger scale of pro sports, they've got a whole bunch of people to manage. They've just spent a ton of money, and everyone has their own guy. And it's like, all right, guys, like let's first of all, like, what is our goal? Do we have even just like someone goes, I really want to be strong, Mark.
Peel back some of the layers. Yeah.
And they go, well, to get stronger, you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, I really don't want to squat heavy weight. Well, then you don't want to be fucking stronger.
Yeah.
So let's really define the goal. And then once you've defined the goal, well, let's start saying, okay, well, first step. Simple, for example. It's like, I really want to change my lifestyle. Okay, well, how much water are you drinking a day? I don't drink water at all. Well, step one. Like, it could be anything.
All I have is Diet Coke.
Right, step one.
You're like, oh.
For the next
well,
week.
We could help with that right away.
For the next week, drink 36 ounces of water a day. That's your goal. Be like, well, that doesn't seem like much. Give it some time. This is a fucking marathon.
Yeah.
This isn't a sprint here. Right?
Yeah.
And so once, it's like a relationship. This is what I say too. Is like,
I'm going to switch to 3 gallons a day. And it's like,
too much. Yeah.
Like, well, no.
relationships fall apart, and they become very evident on why they fall apart when you're out of that relationship. Right? It's because you can't audit that emotional sort of thing a lot of times. The lifestyle of a professional athlete or someone trains, like, they have a hard time auditing what's going good, what's going bad, or whatever when they're in it because they're emotionally attached to it. So what eliminates that sort of confusion is a really, really, really solid process with clearly defined goals for the short term and the long term. And people don't even know how to do goal setting.
Right.
And this is not fucking rocket science, people. That's Tiger Woods needed a swing coach. Like Bryce Harper has a hitting coach. Like the list goes on. Like you are still taking advice from Ed Cohn.
Didn't Tiger Woods get in trouble for swinging around a little too much?
Yeah.
He was like swinging around a little bit.
I'm not the marriage counselor.
Okay.
Yeah, far be it for me to judge. Like I think the female form is quite. Maybe that's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they want you just to be with like one person.
yeah, that's
like,
crazy.
Oh,
That's
impossible.
craziness. But that's the thing is, and a lot of times you get in a professional setting, you have your head football coach, you have your defensive coordinator, you have all these people. They themselves don't have time to babysit or implement these sort of plans because they're so hyper focused on here's the game plan for Sunday. But they have someone come in that I'm not emotionally attached to these players, nor am I emotionally attached to the job that these people have. So I can come in there and have this honest assessment. Like there's a Showtime show that Don Cheadle is in. He comes in and does evaluate big corporate, and he's like, hey, you're bleeding money here, you're wasting here, that person needs to get fired. That's kind of what I ended up doing. Because I go in there, I'm just on this performance side though, and I go, this is really inefficient. But you have the people, let's start doing this. Right. And that's kind of where that is what I did while I was in the military on the Naval Social Warfare side was implement optimization programming for these people, which included, the strength training and all these sort of things. But we need to be able to assess what's going wrong. Once we've got that assessment, we got to fix it.
Almost like, what are just a couple of things someone can do? It's kind of, you mentioned sleep and you mentioned hydration. A couple of tips on sleeping isn't going to fuck up somebody's whole life so badly that they can't execute it. I mean, maybe something like getting a sleep study would be like, it's like a little intrusive and it takes some planning. Right. But it's not really that hard to do. No. So you do something like that.
Yeah, I think sleep is powerful. And I want to think about this, especially as a parent. This will make sense for the parents out there. Really makes sense. Is if you look at the pediatric world, right? The baby comes home from the hospital after it's been born, or even like it could be much older, right? A year old. And as parents, you're like, well, we need light control. Let's black the room out. We need, like the research is saying, especially coming out of the Australian Institute of Sport, which is really the pinnacle, saying, hey, the room needs to be about 68 degrees for optimal sleep. Okay, we need it to be. We want some noise control, like for our children even. We look at, well, what are they're breastfeeding or bottle feeding before so colostrum, right? Or it's casein protein. There's all these things that we go, well, and it's the same time every night. Now, I get it. It can fluctuate. I get that. Like we're talking in a vacuum here a little bit. But there is a process that you and I and so many people that go into, hey, this is how I'm going to train. And it's finite. And if it gets weird, we reset and we do it again. But we just approach sleep like it's something, oh, God, I got to go to sleep. There's no process. We're not preparing the mind or the body for that stimulus because, not stimulus, sleep is stimulus. So that's one of the first things to do is implement a sleep program for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, interesting thing is when you look at stuff like that, the simpler something is, the further back in time you can go and look at information. I bet you there's books from like the 50s or instructional information about like, here's 3 things you should do before you go to bed. And somebody probably wrote forever ago. It still applies fucking today.
Absolutely.
Like take a shower or whatever it might be, just kind of
there is a lot of processing. And then we can get in the Pavlovian side to get a reaction from a certain stimulus that's predictable. Right. You can use scent, you can use flavor, you can use a lot of certain things, and it can, in and of itself can be the process. Just like again, like when you squat or bench, like there's a process, right. And it's not happenstantial. Like so, that's one of those things, and that could be a whole other conversation. But sleep is powerful, and then we can get into diet and certain other things, but also electronics is something else entirely. Like that becomes, like Apple was one of the first technologies that had actually blue light emission, right? Because blue light stimulates. So you start, and then you have a router in your room, you have a TV in your room, you have all these sort of things that detract from that optimal sleep right?
Even they're saying just even Wi-Fi itself.
The router,
Even
depending
just
on where the
Wi-Fi
router
being
is
on,
at,
period, can
yes,
fuck up your sleep
it certainly
patterns.
can. The delta patterns of your brain. It is crazy. Having a cell phone in your pocket can minimize testosterone production.
Right.
Certainly can. I could, again, not in absolutes, but now what if you do, like, if there's 10 things that are less than optimal that you're doing before you go to bed, a lot of people do a lot of those things.
Keep your phone away from your dick, ladies and
There
gentlemen.
we go. Yeah, keep them away from your balls, right? Which is why they make sleeves now of,
For your dick.
yes, yeah, or your phone. Put your phone in so it's in your pocket.
I thought you were going
right?
to tell us
Yeah.
some good military
Yeah,
stories.
huge,
of
like
the,
the old
fleshlight.
chastity belt. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're protecting your balls from your phone, but if you protected your balls, you'd be protecting them from everything, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
I think
just a ball.
Solving world's problems. one
Yes,
testicle
the
at a
stronger
time, right?
stronger jock strap blocking all
Ball
emissions.
sleeve.
Yeah. You already have the manufacturer. Yeah. So I mean that's. We
Strong ball
Try not to
sleeve.
be super long-winded, right? But
Could be those charcoal underwear.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
You could have that in
And
the
you can-
back. And
you know, when you're in a pinch, then you can filter water through it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a survival sling for your balls too. So I just, a lot of people don't have a process for a lot of these sort of things, and they should. But what you see is like you see someone that's a high performer, like Tom Brady, and I've been around that organization a little bit, and some others, and it's just like. It's not happenstantial why they're so successful. Like let's fucking stop pretending for a minute that it's pure luck.
Right.
Like it's silly. Like if you look at all the teams historically that have yielded reproducible successful seasons, like come on, like
Right.
it's not a fucking mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to deflate that many footballs over the years.
Right, exactly.
It's hard to spine enough
Yeah.
people. It's not the information that you get from spying. It's it's the knowledge of what to do with it.
what you use.
Yeah, it's like, what was it? Just Stalin. It's like, it's not he who casts the votes. It's he who counts them. So, I think that you'd be amazed of how many organizations don't have a fucking plan.
Right.
And how many athletes that their talent is way up here, they're just like, I've always just been good. Well, you're out of the league in 2 years because they're all fucking good.
And if you're somebody that's a strength athlete and you're listening right now, one is like start to develop some sort of plan or schedule with your sleep. 2 would be decide what you're going to do with your body weight. You know, really make a conscious decision on over the next 4 or 5 years, what are you going to do with your body weight? Because that's always a huge thing that we hear all the time. People always want to like go down in weight and be more competitive, and the answer is always to gain weight, not necessarily lose weight. But you just need to make a decision on what body weight, what weight class you're going to live in. Make some decisions on what you're going to do with your sleep. Make some decisions on what you're going to do with your hydration. Those are all very easy things to do. Something I hear that's pretty common is, a lot of people are down in Monster Energy drinks and drinking coffee and using pre-workout before training sessions. Well, some people don't train till 6 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, and now it's even probably more popular than ever, but there's people that are training at 10 o'clock, sometimes midnight. What would your advice be to some of these people that are kind of night owls? How, what would a ritual look like for some of these guys that maybe they get done with their training session pretty late? Maybe their last meal is very late. Maybe it's now 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m. What would their ritual look like to get them set up for bed properly, even though they're not sleeping during normal hours?
Right. My first piece of advice is when you decide to make that leap, make sure that you have a timeline to put a little bit of time into it. So it's like, especially if you travel intermittently for your business, your work. You're like, well, I'm going to implement this new strategy, but in 2 days I'm on a trip to LA from Virginia.
And that makes sense.
You know what I mean? So a lot of times it can happen around the holidays. A lot of guys, like if they travel a lot, I'm like, well, no, but I'm home 2 weeks, that 2 weeks of Christmas. Now, you might, that might be the double-edged sword too, but simply put, first step is pick a timeline to begin implementing it. Pick a timeline. And then from there, especially for someone who's late to bed, I prioritize it this way. Food becomes the priority. Macronutrients becomes a priority. Like, make sure you fuel the training, make sure you refuel, right? If you have to use a stimulant, use as little as possible to yield only really the result of just becoming more alert.
So if you could use half a scoop of pre-workout, maybe that would be a good place to start rather than 2 scoops.
Right, because what happens is we're looking for that stimulant. We're the other substitute then is, to be honest with you, most pre-workouts, what you feel isn't the caffeine, it's the beta-alanine.
Right.
Or the arginine. Okay, the
Sometimes niacin, they kinda,
right, get the
get you
niacinamide, the niacinic flush, or whatever it is. So, just try a good beta-alanine. Maybe that. I mean, because ultimately the priorities become, sleep should be the priority. That's the world's greatest performance-enhancing drug.
So you're going to have to kind of think ahead of time of, okay, training's at midnight. My preparation to get to the gym sometimes is a pre-workout or coffee. Like, I don't use pre-workout myself, but I usually have like a cup of coffee. And for some of these like night owls. But what you're saying is, like, let's pre-plan well ahead. So if you're going to have that cup of coffee or something like that, maybe you can run off a little bit less.
Yep.
Do that before your training session. Get your training session done, but be very mindful that at some point you have to go to fucking bed.
Yeah. I mean, really, too, I just need to be awake. Like, I don't use pre-workout either. I use something called Strike Force. It's just straight caffeine. But take it earlier. So because for me, if I'm going to eat before I train, there tends to be some lethargy that happens after I eat. So I just want to combat that lethargy, train, and then you already hit it. Have a timeline, have a plan. But don't just have a plan to get you to your workout, because what I'm trying to do is I want to train, but then it's like I need to get home to go to sleep. Have a plan for that too. You may have to plan in a 30-minute, like, plop down and watch ESPN for 30 minutes just to get your mind off of whatever. But then it's have shower. Maybe I always drink casein protein before I go to bed. I use the same toothpaste. Mint itself has become a Pavlovian response for me. I travel with the same toothpaste that I have at home. Eucalyptus is a very powerful, or whatever scent you may like. You go home,
Lavender for some people.
Right, exactly. You come home from college or a trip, right? You've been on a road for a week or something. You put on a clean shirt, and that laundry detergent, like, instantly, like, I'm home kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
maybe from the time you were a kid, you always bathed and got into pajamas or whatever and went to bed, and so it's all triggering all the similar thoughts.
And then you can take, once you have established a home routine, then you can take that routine maybe a micro scale. Like, I'm here again, I have the same toothpaste, right? I have the same mint floss. I travel with a 1 ounce vial of eucalyptus, and I use steam. I do the Bruce Lee method. Like, Bruce Lee would use a steamy bathroom so we could actually see the steam. He can visualize breathing patterns. So especially I'm really stressed out. So mine all came from my son. We used to rub Vicks Vapor Rub on my son's feet. And I removed the end of his crib, and I would, on my knees, chest on there, and I'd fall asleep with my hands on his feet. And now I have that Pavlovian response of something that really brought me happiness. And so when I'm really stressed out or really need to sleep, I just rub the eucalyptus, some diaphragmatic breathing, and I'm like drooling. So here's the trick. And so funny as it is, we're trying to affect the vagus nerve. That's our the nerve back here. That is directly correlated to stress management and stress. We know it's been activated if you start salivating. So good food, good sex, good stress management. Yawning is trying. So we know that if we're breathing appropriately and we're affecting the vagus nerve, we know we're salivating. So that's how we know, well, great, we should breathe, belly breathe. But if you're not getting salivation when you're belly breathing, you're not affecting the vagus nerve. So it's really very, very simple. Once we learn it, it's like your preparation to get under load or my preparation. It's, it works because of the way you can feel. Like, how do we know that we can downregulate? It's called central nervous system downregulation. It's the Pavlovian response, salivation, which affects digestion.
Right.
So that's the nerdery of it, but it's super powerful.
Even something like at the end of a long day, just finding a routine, a ritual to kind of slow you down. Like, for me, it would be like walking. For my wife, it's reading.
Yep.
Each person's going to have kind of their own thing. I don't know what like research shows or doesn't show or whatever, but I think whatever calms you down. Maybe it's music or something, but what about like electronics? We need to pull those out. Like you need to get rid of the TV and ditch the phone. And what do you do
that's
about
the bookmark. It's like we know that most people are going to have a phone or an iPad or a computer or a TV. That for me is the beginning of my nighttime routine. It's like I'm going to get the last email out of the way and I'm going to be okay with it. Like I don't begin my process until I know that the electronics I'm done with. I'm going to finish watching my movie, check my emails, last minute. It's done.
Just a side note, you want to be more successful, get rid of that shit for a little while.
Yeah.
Like it'll make you, it'll force you to be more productive because you don't need to periodically spend 15 and 30 minutes on Instagram and on emails. You need to actually, just like we talked about earlier, being present with your son. You can't make a promise to him that you can't fulfill. Same thing with yourself. Don't make promises that you can't fulfill to yourself. Actually fucking try to concentrate on stuff.
Right.
Multitasking is bullshit. It doesn't work. You can't even listen to an audiobook and have that impact you while you're doing something else. Music has been changed forever because music is now stuff that we do while we're doing something else. When Jim was growing up, I'm sure he was probably dialed into that fucking music. That music probably meant everything to him as opposed to the world we live in now where you're doing other things. He probably heard every beat and every tone and every pitch of every single sound that he ever ran into with some of his favorite musicians, whereas today you're doing so many different things. So you can't multitask. It's a farce. Yep. You need to fucking concentrate on what it is you're trying to do.
Right.
I will say this, however, when I was writing my master's project, I had a lot of trouble with writer's block, even though I was trying to make it as mechanical as possible, which is what I always tell people. If you have to write something long, figure out a way to make it mechanical and take the creativity out of it to begin with, because the creativity will come as you go through the process.
Right.
But I found that listening to books on tape, or at the time audiobooks, while I was writing,
probably kind of soothing almost.
It helped shut off, because my problem with writer's block is self-editing, too much too early self-editing. It took that part of my brain and it did something else with it while I was writing. So I was able to tear through writing things without having that self-editing always interrupting my flow.
For sure.
Could I tell you exactly what was going on in the story? No.
Right.
Because I wasn't really multitasking. I was just using it as a distraction to that particular part of my brain.
Well, it also would depend on what kind of book.
Yeah.
You know, like
it was.
If you were listening to something very specific, if you listened to like a story, that would
fiction, nonfiction too.
Yeah,
that would matter, quite a bit.
Yeah, and it just also depended on whether I cared about it at all. If I didn't really care what's going on with the story, I can,
zone out.
Yeah, exactly. It just provided that level of distraction in my brain so that I would just not so self-critical, and I was able to actually get the words out. And then, editing afterwards is fine, but if you can't get through a paragraph or a sentence because you're self-editing so hard, it's not productive. You're never going to finish.
Right. Yeah, a lot of these issues, for lack of a better term, they've been manifested because of our environment. We're a light switch away from light at any given moment.
Right.
We're a light. We know now that there is specifically dopamine responses or serotonin, responses from likes. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So we're in that drive of like, totally understand that world, but again, we can't take care of the people we're trying to help or affect or appeal to if we're a fucking hot mess.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes now. Don't get us wrong here. Like this is not a light switch action. Mm-hmm. This is going to take work, just like it is. Hey, well, how do you get a big squat? Squat moderately heavy every day, every week for a decade. Right? Like now, this response can be a bit quicker, but don't. It's going to be frustrating because it's not fucking easy. Especially since, we spent a decade or more for some of us on this hamster wheel of inefficiency, but yet we're outliers and still performing at a high level. Mm-hmm. That's the conundrum. Like, our ability to be resilient is a testament, right? That's the reason. Like, I can only 4 hours of sleep, I'm good. Like, No, that's just showing how resilient the human body is. That doesn't mean you're optimal.
Yeah.
That's the problem. The human body is so resilient that we can do stupid shit.
A hamster wheel of inefficiency.
Yeah.
I love that.
Favorite. We need to invent
t-shirt.
one of those.
I'm
Jeff
just
Nichols.
spitting out pearls here.
Let's just kind of close this up with just talking a little bit about mindset. When you become a Navy SEAL and you go through all the training, is that something that they're particularly training, or is it all physical? How does some of that work? And what if there is some strategy to your mind in the field and your mind going through training and stuff like that? What are some of the things that they teach you, or some of the things you learned to get through some of these ball-busting PT sessions and stuff like that?
Yeah, I believe mindset is derived from consistent struggle with success. Like, there's always a struggle, and I'm consistently successful in overcoming that struggle. Like, mindset is not something where you read a book and go, bam, I've got mindset, I've got motivation. That's ignorant. That's super ignorant. The whatever passion or job or whatever it is in parenting, mindset of parenting, it's forged the same way. Like, the kids are going to test you, right? But your consistency allows your children to grow up to not be shitheads and you to be a good parent, right? Mindset as a SEAL is, now, believe it or not, there are really shitty SEALs. Because BUDS is this. Understand this very clearly. That's what people are like, oh, BUDS. BUDS is a deselection process, right? They are specifically making it so very difficult that it deselects 85%, so you get to the 15 that the community is going to invest its time into.
Get attrit down to
like,
those.
let's not. BUDS is not SEAL training. BUDS is deselection to get to SEAL training.
Now we have 15 people, or we have 15% of the population that we want to invest time and money into to push further ahead.
Yep. So that's where I just want to bite people in the side of the face when they go, SEAL training is log PT. No, it's not. Like, I haven't fucking seen a log since BUDS. But it's super ignorant because we're playing on people's sort of majesty of training.
Right.
It isn't. And I've heard this of one of my son's friends. Actually, is on his second trip through BUDS because he did not do well the first time. Well, really because he gave up.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the thing I've always heard, is that it's not as much about performance as it is about the willingness to continue on.
Yeah, like, there are very few people. Like, I had 188 guys in my BUDS class, 188. Of those 188 that started, 22 of us completed. And of the 160 that failed, probably 10 or 12 were dropped very early on for performance. The rest of them quit because
That's pretty cool, because these are people that already think they're badasses.
Right. And so we had a
So
starting
that's pretty cool.
we had two starting
It's like,
quarterbacks.
no, your badass card. We're taking that shit right now.
It's
You
crazy
ain't
because,
going
like, the
any further.
population of the people then, like, we had there was a starting quarterback at the time from Florida State. Quit. Right, we had another starting quarterback from another SEC team or Big 12 team at the time. Quit. We had the number 16th ranked triathlete in the world in there. Quit on the first Friday.
I'm out.
Right. We had a guy in my BUDS class that didn't have a house, didn't learn to read or write, didn't have running water until he was 12. He slept in the trunk of a car in East Texas. His mom was a transient, and who knows, right? Like, he's a byproduct of resiliency, right?
Right.
Like, who knows? Like, I grew up in Iowa, like, chopping wood when it's negative 30 degrees when I was 12. Like, I worked on a dairy farm full time when I was 12 years old, 40 hours a week at times. So I don't know, like, what the byproduct is, but we don't want to kid ourselves that it's something that you try to do, and that's what people think, that, like, training is something you try. No, it's something you do. You either do it or you don't. And I hate the idea that we can sell this idea of, like, 6-minute abs, right? Or, hey, like, you can come to this SEAL experience. Like, and that's what a lot of times with professional athletes, I come in like, I want you to give me resiliency and mindset. And I go, well, if I was running your organization, you'd have out of 52 NFL players, only about 6 of them are going to tolerate me. So if you really, so that's where it's like we're not bringing in, we're infusing.
Yeah, you want me to break people? Like do
yeah,
that
I
all
can
day,
do
right?
that.
Yeah.
Like I want to infuse some of the methodology. I don't want you to train like a SEAL.
Right.
That shit ain't gonna work, and it's ignorant and it's disrespectful. And so for me, that's where like the tactical population of hairs on fire train. Like, no, like that's not how it works. Like Bryce Harper doesn't practice hitting home runs. The tactical population doesn't practice like these. Now there's a time for it. There's a time for it, and that's called butts. And I think so. For mindset, we need to teach people how to get realistic goals and struggles, overcome them, and then make them a little bit more difficult. But not all the time. Like if we're always setting somebody up, it's like Charlie Brown. That asshole won't stop trying to kick the football. Like, stop. You know what I mean? Like,
You're gonna hurt yourself.
Yeah, you're gonna pull a groin. So, like, we don't want to do that to people. We don't want to keep setting them up setting them up to failure, because all you're gonna do is fail. And that's in our profession as practitioners and coaches and mentors, whatever, parents. Like, if you imagine setting your son or daughter up every day to fail, like, they are gonna fucking hate you, and they should. So don't spoil the rod. But if all you do is beat the dog with a stick, that dog's gonna bite. So don't. I think that we're in a place to affect people positively. Like, let's be that positive effect in their life.
If you're about to engage in some stuff that's difficult, whether it's going to school or fucking conditioning work or whatever it is, you mentioned some stuff earlier today that you said that you would try to implement, and one of the things that you said was doing things together. Trying to find somebody to do some stuff with. Why do you feel that's so valuable?
There's very few things in the training population that's that valuable, because, like, if we were consistent training partners, there's going to be over like of a calendar year, you're going to have some questionable times where, like, man, I just don't feel like training. And that's for me as a friend or even a mentor or a coach, a teacher, whatever it may be, to go, hey, Mark, like, we can do it. Like, I'm there with you.
Right.
And we can scale it based off of your level of readiness, and vice versa. I'm going to come in and go, man, I just had the worst argument with my girlfriend.
Yeah, and this is the way men communicate.
Yeah.
Like, men don't normally just like shell out information like that. We got to be doing something together. Got to be like fucking fishing or hunting or lifting or something.
Yeah.
And then that's when you're like, all these problems are going on, right?
Yeah, that's where accountability and throughput. Like, that's what it is. When it comes to training with a group, it's powerful. Like, it doesn't have to be like, where the fuck have you been? You haven't been training. That's kind of what the women do. Like, hey, you missed training today. Like, we're going to jazzercise or whatever. But sorry, and the ladies can be like, you're an asshole. That's why I can't keep a relationship. So, but I think that there's power in numbers, especially when you're like-minded individuals.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a spoken thing. It's like, hey, man, we're at the gym today. We're squatting today. That might be all it takes, right?
I think men need mentors in general. Like, they need people to like tell them shit. I think it's just the way it is, and it's sometimes hard to crack. It's hard to crack the code and hard to break down. Maybe the thoughts they had previously about certain things, because he might say, "Hey, man, like, if you don't mind, I can show you how to bench or something." They'll be like, "Oh, I know how to bench." Like, every bro just thinks they know how to bench when they don't. But like some simple things, like Stan Efforting shared with me some stuff about walking. He's like, hey, why don't you start, walking a little bit more? And it's stuff I messed around with a little bit of it in the past, but he put it in much simpler terms. He's just like, whenever you can, just walk 10 minutes. Yeah. And so I've been posting these 10-minute walks. Now people are tagging me left and right on Instagram. They're doing 10-minute walks too. And even though we're not necessarily together, it's kind of mentorship at its finest. People are seeing that. They're like, fuck, dude, 10 minutes? I can walk 10 minutes. Yep. And anybody that's actually messed around with it, it is so easy to do. You get done with a training session. You're already sweaty and gross. I realize it's the summer. It's fucking hot out. There's a lot of excuses. But when you go somewhere, whether you eat healthy or you don't eat healthy, It is so fucking simple to walk for 10 minutes. Just find a longer route back to your car, and sure enough, 10 minutes went away. Make a phone call to 1 or 2 people. Listen to 2 or 3 songs.
Yeah.
And your fucking 10 minutes is burnt up. Listen to a podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
And your 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Maybe you might fucking go walk forever if you listen to this one, because we're almost going 2 hours.
That's why it drives me crazy when people are jockeying for the closest position parking spot to the door of the gym. Like, excuse me?
I always take the stairs and the escalator in the airport. I'm like, I don't. Anyway, whatever it is, bravado, whatever it is. But I think that we are really. You're having a bad day. You come in and train anyway. When you get done with it, when do we ever go? Man, I wish I hadn't trained. I feel much worse now.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, 'cause it's hard to live. It's hard to live in the future. So, I mean, it's just that's why group training, group settings, are so valuable. And it might just be a group partner, but I'm good to be by myself, and I like to train by myself sometimes. But sometimes it would be nice for someone to go, "Hey, man, we're training today. Let's get your shit."
Right. The other thing you shared with us too was just kind of saying, make sure whatever it is that you're talking about doing, like make sure it's shit that you want to do.
Life's too short to not, especially if you've been on the earth for a bit. Life's too short to do bunch of shit someone else wants to do.
Yeah.
Or just kind of live in this world of I'm not really doing anything I really am passionate about. Like, it's hard to go, well, instantly I'm passionate. I want to be a fucking knife maker or whatever, woodworker, a power lifter. You may not come to that realization overnight, but if you are in locomotion, if you're in movement searching for it, you're going to find it. And being stagnant sucks because you're not making any progress. You're not even getting rid of the things you don't even know if you want to do them or not. Mm-hmm. Try it. If you don't like it, move on. Right? I don't like to be stagnant. It drives me fucking nuts.
I like to keep moving.
Always.
Where can people find you?
Best place to find me probably is Instagram, Jeff CSCS, or YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I don't navigate Facebook a whole lot. I haven't really learned the Twitter thing just yet, but I'm pretty responsive, especially on the YouTube or Instagram. I'm in Virginia Beach. If we really need to coordinate information, I'm happy to send my email out if you reach out to me. But I'm learning. That's why I'm here.
Fuck yeah. I'm learning too. I want to share this quote with everybody. It's something I just heard the other day that it just made a whole lot of fucking sense to me. And it feels like something that I've always tried to make work. So basically it just says, I don't always make the right decision, but I make whatever decision I choose right. So whatever decisions you try to make, try to fucking work your best at making those end up being correct, whatever fucking way that you have to. Multiply your hustle, multiply your muscle, may all your shit be tapered. I'm at Mark Smellybell on Instagram and Twitter. Catch y'all later.
Shout out to all of our sponsors, 8Man Strong Apparel at 8manstrong.com, bodybuilding.com for all your supplement needs, Compex USA for cutting-edge muscle stim machines. Get 28 additional percent off with the code PowerCast. Reebok.com, the home of the legacy lifting shoe. Increase your bench press at howmuchyoubench.net. Power, the only strength magazine available in both digital and print at thepowermagazine.com. Precision Nutrition, home of the world's top nutrition coaches. Check out at get.pn/PowerCast. You can find me on the internet at the Jim McD, and you can find the show on Instagram at Mark Bell's PowerCast.
Yay.
Yay.
Go be somebody.